Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. And my name is Rory, and I have on the line Mr. Alasdair Macleod, who I met through SGT Report, where I'm a daily contributor. It's a real pleasure to speak with Alasdair, and we're going to cover the HSBC vaults, China's desire to, and we're going to get into the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and we're going to touch on Greece and Russia and China. What's happening there? Without any further ado, Mr. Alasdair Macleod. The article that you put out on Friday, my goodness.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting.
I think, yeah, it is very interesting. I mean, there are big changes happening in London now, and I don't think people have really woken up to the implications. And then on top of that, there is a new, if you like, dealing platform, which is going to operate between the fixes. Now, this is a commercial enterprise, which may or may not take off. But from what little I've seen of it, it's actually quite a sort of a considered operation, and it's covering a number of centres around the world. So it'll be trading 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And I mean, just sort of reading the literature, it seems to me that they've made an effort to get liquidity onto the platform by getting sort of major participations or participants into it. Now, that's desperately important, because if you can get liquidity on the platform, then existing players in the market can use it as a means of hedging. You know, if they've got to deliver physical, they know they can go and get physical off this exchange. The other thing is that it introduces a wider range of players, if you like, of investors, whatever you like to call them, into the market. So that should, in time, create net buyers. So I would see it as a positive for the market on that basis, as well as providing better physical liquidity, if you like.
That sounds awesome. If there's more buyers in the market, and there's more people that are trading back and forth, actually, then that has to be positive for the health of the market, and to be able to wash out some of this, rigging. I mean, this, quantifiable. It's rigged markets. I mean,
I think that's the point. I mean, you and I and various others, we all sort of know that the whole system is rigged, but the degree of rigging that actually occurs in the gold market is always impossible to quantify by definition. But now we have a situation where the pricing power is being taken away from the establishment. Let me put it that way. What now matters, certainly on the fixes, is the deepest pocket.
Exactly.
Not who you are. I mean, if you remember the fixing committee, all the gold dealing business on the fix would come through you. You would see is exactly what's going on. You would see that the Bank of China is buying at the moment, or not buying, or what their limits are. Their behavior in the fix, whether they withdraw from the fix at a certain level. Now, that's information which is invaluable to you as a trader in the market. And, at the moment, until the 20th of March, only 4 people have got this information. And it allows them to have an edge in the market, which, in terms of a fair and open market, is obviously fundamentally wrong.
Yes.
But now we have a situation where it's deepest pockets, and the deepest pockets by far are the Chinese.
And what I've been thinking about this morning, Alasdair, and help me to understand this. So I'm a buyer in the Eastern market.
Yep.
And I see that gold is currently trading, at 12.05 and 30 cents.
Yeah.
I decided that I'm okay with paying $12.75 an ounce. Would I be able to do that and put those contracts out there?
Well, you wouldn't do that. Basically, what you would do is you try and buy. I mean, if you're a genuine buyer, you try and buy them as cheaply as possible. So if you think that gold is wildly undervalued, then you just buy it. You buy what you can until you bid it up to the level which you think is where you'd want to stop.
Okay.
I mean, the same for sellers as well. I mean, we mustn't look at this as just on one side. The problem is that we have very few sellers left
Right.
in Europe. And the second bomb, I think, which you might be referring to, is I think evidence of this to a degree anyway, and that is that HSBC appear to be, now I haven't had this actually confirmed from HSBC yet, but they appear to be closing 7 of their vaults in London.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there is little doubt in my mind that running vaults in London is no longer a profitable business. And the reason for that basically is that gold has gone. It's been bought by the Asians, and so anything that's been in London is either held in the Bank of England's vault, or has already been shipped to somewhere like Argos or Jerez for recasting into 1 kilogram bars for the Chinese market. So there has to come a point where excess vault capacity is even more excess than it was a little while ago. We've already seen Deutsche Bank have sold their vault. Oh, sorry, they've been trying to sell their vault. I don't know if they've actually found a seller. I don't think they have actually. And JP Morgan, they had a vault, I understand, in John Carpenter Street, which is between the Inns of Court and the City by Blackfriars. Now that site has been redeveloped, so that vault must be closed. I mean, that can't be there anymore. So it has been a changing scene, and I think what London has seen is that in the bull market of 2009 to 2011, there was definitely a huge increase in interest in holding physical gold, and as a result, vault capacity began to be ramped up. Now it's gone the other way, and it's been going the other way for 2 or 3 years. You had the withdrawal, if you like, from the market of people like ABN AMRO and Rabobank, who told their clients that they were unable to deliver in gold, and that happened just before the April 2013 smashdown. And I think was probably one of the reasons for the smashdown. But anyway, getting back to HSBC, the reason this is very, very important is that if they're closing their vaults in London, we need to know the status of the GLD bars, which they hold as custodian. And also, I mean, I'm sure there are other ETF physicals that they operate for as custodian. One of them is ETF securities, for example. So there is, I mean, you're talking about, I don't know how much there is between the two now, something like 1,000 tons of gold, which has got, if they're withdrawing from vaulting completely, that's got to find a new custodian. So we want to know whether the closing of the vaults also affects those custody operations. That's something we're waiting for. I haven't seen anything on this. I have actually been in contact with HSBC trying to get an answer out of them. I've been in contact with ETF Securities, and they tell me that HSBC are preparing an announcement. Now that I think is worrying, because firstly, if they are preparing an announcement as opposed to denying the rumours, then it confirms that they are doing something like closing their vaults. The fact that they are preparing an announcement and not prepared to say anything, I mean, if the custody arrangements for an ETF like ETF Securities were not being changed, then on the inquiry from ETF Securities to HSBC, because they did ask HSBC this morning, what the hell's going on, sort of thing, because they had got people like me getting on to them saying, hey, oi, and HSBC said, we are preparing an announcement. They did not say to them, so far as I can establish, that we're preparing an announcement, but don't worry, you're all right. We're not. Do you see? It's a very
Yes.
important point.
Yes.
So this worries me. Now, it worries me on another level, and that is I'm not too sure what other custodians there are who can take on the vaulting of 1,000 tons of gold in London. I mean, our JP Morgan could do it, but are they in the market? Now, the next worry that I get from this is that if they can't find a custodian, then certainly in ETF securities prospectus, they have to liquidate the fund. If this happens with GLD, I would assume that they would also have to liquidate the fund, which basically means that there would be gold dumped on the market, and a lot of ETF holders extremely angry. But I suppose the conspiracy theorist in me sort of thinks, is this a way in which you can get a lot of physical gold? Now, these are all open questions at this moment in time. We've got no evidence that this is actually what's going to happen, or there is a plan or anything like that.
Right.
But I think it is a situation which should be of sufficient concern for the authorities here to actually intervene and make sure that an orderly market that the market is kept, if you like, in an orderly fashion, and to ensure that proper arrangements are in place, not a situation where HSBC walks away from it, gives, in the case of GLD, I think it's 60 days notice. In the case of ETF securities, it's 90 days notice, walks away and says, you make your own arrangements, we're not interested. That is not good enough.
No, I wouldn't think so. And I wanted to ask you, I want to use that number that you threw out a minute ago of the 1,000 tons that could possibly be in the GLD and the ETF.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, say they are closed, they're getting ready to unleash this 1,000 tons on the market with China.
Well, I'm not sure that they will unleash it on the market. I mean, basically, if you're closing, if they're closing vaults generally, then I think that they have a shortage of physical.
Right.
They need to get their books straight. And I mean, I'm just sort of, again, I'm theorizing and probably going way off the deep end here. But you've got the new fixing arrangement from the 20th of this month. You've got a short position, and the mines are closing. So forward contracts and all the rest of it to cover today's liabilities are harder to come by. There's just a shortage of physical in the West, and suddenly this market is going legit. What do you do if you're part of, if you're part of the establishment? It's a problem.
It doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. Don't you find it interesting that as London has decided to relinquish their reins of the fix, that HSBC makes this announcement, all of these within just a few days of each other, and on top of that, then you have over in China, or actually in Bangkok, you have these at least one billboard has shown up over there announcing the RMB as the world currency. I mean, there's this gigantic billboard that Simon Black over at Sovereign Man took a photograph of, or he presented a photograph of it, and it shows, and it clearly states RMB, new choice, the world currency, and it has an image of what appears to be a gold coin. And that showed up middle of last week, and you have the International Commodity Exchanges trading platform announcing that they're coming out on March the 20th, and HSBC announcing that they're possibly closing, all of their gold vaults. Isn't that right?
The first thing I would say is, we do not have an announcement yet from HSBC.
Okay.
All I have got from HSBC is hearsay. Andrew Maguire said something about it on King World News. I got an email from a contact who told me that his bullion broker has been given notice. So, there is, if you like, evidence that this is happening, but I haven't got an announcement out of HSBC. And I would really want to wait to see that announcement before I can really, get 2 and 2 equals 4. At the moment, I'm in danger of making 2 and 2 equals 6, as we all are. But I think we've just got to sort of rein in a little bit and say, we need to see that announcement. That's the first thing. HSBC have either got to confirm or deny it, and if they're confirming that they're closing vaults, we need some detail as to exactly what they're doing and what the status is of the ETFs.
Okay.
Now, that I think is desperately important. But beyond that, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. I was not surprised at that advertisement in Bangkok. I really was not surprised, because I have been expecting the Chinese to continue to build the renminbi as a settlement currency. Now, they can't use the renminbi everywhere. They don't want it to be a reserve currency, which is a very important point. Therefore, they're not turning around and saying to us in the West, look, what we want to do is we want to replace the dollar. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is that we would prefer that you trade with us. Now, in order for us to prefer to trade with them, then at some stage we're going to want to have some comfort, if you like, that renminbi are worth holding as a currency. Now, this is where gold comes in.
Okay.
I don't know when, I don't know how, but somehow there has got to be a link, I think, to give the renminbi a level of credibility in cross-border trade, which places it above the dollar. And I think that gold is the obvious link for this. I think it can be done. And the reason it can be done is that let me take a step back.
Okay.
If you go back to 2002, the charter of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was implemented, and that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a joint deal between Russia and China, where they share security intelligence. So the people who try and assassinate people and throw bombs and all the rest of it, they exchange information. It then moved on to sort of cross-border trade and infrastructure projects and things like that. And the last thing that they want to put in place is to get away from the dollar. Now, I put it that way simply because, from the point of view of the Chinese and the Russians, every deal they do in dollars is reflected in a bank account in New York. Now, this is valuable information for, we can now almost call America an enemy, if you like, from their point of view. Not so much from the Chinese point of view, but yeah, because of,
yes.
They are disputing territory in the South China Sea.
Yes.
And what we are seeing is we're seeing the establishment of this huge, great bloc, and it's a trading bloc, it's an economic bloc. It's only a political bloc in the sense that they are sharing common interests, and the common interests really are about trade. It's not a political bloc in the sense that the EU is, where they're trying over time to get the Germans to drink French wine and the French to eat breakfast or whatever, whatever the scheme is. They're not trying to homogenize everybody.
Right.
What they're trying to do is just trade. And Russia has got the resources. China has got the manufacturing capability. This is a plan that has been in the making now since 1980. So if you put all this together, what you have is a huge, great trading area, which when India joins, and India has agreed that they will join, along with Pakistan, deadly enemy, believe it or not, over Kashmir, Afghanistan and Mongolia. When those countries join, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization will cover more than half the world's population.
Yep.
This is enormously powerful. if you go back 10 years, when all this was sort of just starting, and the Chinese and Beijing were getting very excited about it, but we in the West were yawning and saying, this is just nonsense. In a sense, it didn't matter to us because all these people were poor, but now they're rich. They're the new rich. They are getting richer and we're getting poorer. We're getting poorer because we're being taxed to death. And they're getting richer because they're actually trading. They're doing things. They're interested not, when they turn up to trade, they don't sort of start telling you how to behave. And then, oh, by the way, we could sell you some fridges or something. No, they come over, they just say, you want a deal?
Yes. Let's conduct business.
There's no conditionality attached. It's a very, very different approach from ours, which has just got tied up in sort of, I don't know, some sort of ethics, morality, whatever. I mean, we have a completely different outlook on life from that part of the world. But what this means, coming back to the currency, is they want to get away from some of the perceived problems that we have in developing their future. The Chinese aren't fools. They can see what's happening to Western currencies.
Exactly.
They can see what's likely to happen to their own currency. But that is something they've got to control. And certainly I would be worried about the Chinese economy because of the amount of credit around. I mean, it is a bubble economy, and the history of governments controlling the deflation of bubbles is not a happy history. And the idea that the Chinese can manage it, I think, whereas we can't, I think is actually kind of mistaken. And I think this is going to be put to the test. So, the world is not easy. And I think the path towards a sound currency in China is not easy either. It can be done, but what they would have to do is they would have to completely reject the Keynesian economic approach that the West has got itself completely hooked on.
But aren't they moving away from that?
Well,
as far as Russia has implemented the alternative to the SWIFT system. There's somewhere around 90 plus banks that are already on board with that. China, as part of the BRICS, and both of them are part of the BRICS, have opened up the Shanghai Development Bank. That's two huge components of moving away from the dollar hegemony, right? I mean, so they've got two massive components to be able to do that and to be able to work in concert with, have the BRICS and the SCO work in concert with each other. And it just seems like that their plan is coming together, and it seems to be moving along at a pace that may be the reason for the aggression that we're seeing out of Washington, D.C. towards Russia through Ukraine. I mean, would you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're
wading in thin waters.
No. I wouldn't say that, Rory. I think you're probably attributing too much common sense to our leaders. Coming back to your basic point about how the Chinese and the Russians, sort of show signs, if I can put it this way, of not really accepting Keynesianism. I think that's true generally. In the case of China, I worry slightly about how they make credit available, how they've puffed up the whole thing on this sort of sea of credit. I'm not convinced they really know what they're doing and that they can handle that credit bubble. That was my basic point. Okay. Now, having said that, they haven't actually, if you like, sort of been tutored in Keynesian economics from the outset. I mean, if you've got sort of the wise heads, if you like, if I can call them that, in the Communist Party who are coming up with the 5-year plans. They didn't go to an Ivy League university. Let's put it that way. Now, in Russia is interesting because the governor of the Russian central bank, Elvira Ljubljana, I think she's called. Before that, she was Putin's private economic advisor. Now, the indications I have are that she's probably somewhere towards the Austrians in terms of her thinking, rather than towards the Keynesians. Now, I say that slightly with my tongue in cheek because it's difficult to get a handle on what people in a position of power actually think. Because they, if you're an Austrian economist, I know one very prominent Austrian economist in a position in a central bank which is very, very major. But you would never, never, ever think that that person is an Austrian economist from his speeches and from his writings and so on and so forth. I just happen to know what his university history was, which tells me that he was an economist. He's an Austrian. But when you're in the position in a central bank, you cannot admit to being an Austrian economist because you are so far against the grain that immediately you're rejected from your position. Now, this is true, if you like, within a central bank in the West, but I think it is also true in the world which is run by the IMF and all the rest of it. Now, to a degree, I think that the new BRICS Bank gets away from that. The proof of it getting away, we will see if they restrict what they're doing, not to bailing out countries, but effectively to trade deals. It's a very important distinction. Yes. Because what the IMF does, it doesn't have anything to do with trade. What they do is they bail out countries that are in difficulty.
They just strap them with more debt. Absolutely.
And I think at this BRICS Bank, if their approach is, look, we'd like to trade with this country, it's part of our club, as it were. We will make money available to them to trade, but we're not going to bail them out. I think if we see not quite black and white, but if we see the emphasis towards trade, then we will all know that there is a more Austrian approach, an Austrian come mercantilist approach, if you like, to this new BRICS Bank compared with the IMF. And I think that's a very important distinction. So it'll be interesting to see.
It will be, and I think that what the plan is, and I don't know that they have anything spearheaded or that they've got anything in line at this point, because I mean they've just agreed on the funding between the five of them. I have been of the understanding that it was specifically for development for items like railroad lines or infrastructure of water systems or grid systems, or something that would benefit not only the country where it is, but benefit that it would open up pipelines to other countries as well, as far as the trade, like what you were talking about.
Absolutely, that's how I would see it. I mean, we've got, for example, China's spending is something like $50 billion equivalent on the new Silk Road.
Yes.
And this is meant to be a huge infrastructure link, if you like, tying together the whole of Asia. This is and sort of getting Asian goods as far as Europe. I mean, this is a major infrastructure project, and makes so much sense. And it makes sense in the context of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And if you think of the power of Russia with her resources, China with her manufacturing capability, what they're doing is that they've used us in the West, if you like, as the stepping stone to develop the capability for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They started off making cheap goods for us. They've made progressively more technologically sophisticated goods for us. I mean, all the Apple stuff and all the rest of it is all made there, for example. And they'll continue to trade for us. But they see their future basically developing their own market, which is the whole of Asia and as much of Eastern Europe as they can grab hold of, which is why the Ukraine is so important. That's why it's the battleground, if you like, between NATO and Russia. We're looking at this. We can see what they're doing.
Right.
China has not only got all the if you like, the American aligned nations to the south, like the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and all the rest of them. I mean, all those countries have big Chinese populations. Culturally, they're already there. They don't have to be included, but they're already there. We have the same situation if you go to the west of this whole conurbation and look at the Baltic states and look at eastern Poland and the Ukraine, obviously, and Moldova, and all these places. You've got all the links there. They don't have to take them all over. But what Russia wants is it wants security, because Russia's history has been one of, invasion, and it's always been the prime fear. And the successful Tsars in the past are the ones who have been able to protect Russian territory, and I think Putin sees that as being very, very important. So, if there is, if any common sense comes into this, I think that once the non-Russian part of the Ukraine is properly neutral, then I think Putin will be happy with that compromise. I think that the Baltic states, they're very, very worried about, they're just next, they're going to be the next ones to be invaded. Putin doesn't have to do that. He really doesn't have to do that. And I don't think that's really where his interest lies. So all in all, it's, I think what we're seeing is the assembly of a brand new economic bloc, which is going to dominate the world. I mean, literally. The rest of us now also around. I think America is roughly where Britain was in the sort of 30s. The glory is fading fast.
Very fast.
I'm sorry to say that to an American, but I think our behaviour is very much on the back foot too. We just, we're losing, and when you're losing, you know how difficult it is to get sort of back into a winning position. What? And my goodness, America's struggling trying to do it with NATO and partners who are getting reluctant to play this game. In Europe, I mean, like Germany, for example.
Right.
And it's almost like anything you do just doesn't bloody work. I mean, like, you suddenly find you're accused, probably rightly, of bugging Angela Merkel's telephone. And this just makes you enemies. Anything like that suddenly, some junior guy called Snowden, who you've never heard of, ends up, blowing apart all your signals intelligence, and This is an absolute nightmare, but it is, I'm afraid, typical, I think, of an empire in decline. It's just that, it's all fragmenting, basically, all fragmenting.
Yep, and speaking of which, the last thing I want to ask you about is Greece, and it ties into Russia and what you've been saying, and as we have read recently, that Russia had approached Greece to help them with their finances. And I know, I know, the whole world knows that China is accustomed to making deals with people that benefit their long-term plans.
Yeah.
Would you see Greece, and it's no secret that Russia wants Greece to be part of possibly the new Silk Road. China possibly sees that as an inroads as well. Is that even a possibility, or am I way out in the weeds here?
It is a possibility, but it's not. It's not an easy. It's not an easy deal. For a start, you've got to think of the relationship between Greece and Turkey. I mean, basically, they still hate each other. And Turkey is sort of going its own way. They've got their local sort of minor version of Putin, if you like. But Turkey, interestingly, they they want to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They put down their marker to go and join. And before then, before this chap Erdogan came in, it was elected as prime minister, whenever it was, Turkey was trying desperately to get into the European Union. But the French kept on saying no. And the reason for that is that the French have a huge Muslim population, and they didn't want to see any more Muslims, in effect, in the European Union. Plus there's the geography. Most of Turkey is in Asia Minor, and so, ethnically, Turkey's turned its back on us now, and they're moving towards Asia. They're moving towards Russia. They've already signed a deal with Russia on the Southern Pipeline, New Southern Pipeline, which Turkey's going to pick up a lot of income on the flows that go through that pipeline. I have no doubt that Russia will want to extend that through Greece or through that way, and there is the possibility, if you like, of deals with Greece on that basis. I think the idea of Greece integrating with Russia more, I see that as unlikely, because if Turkey's already going in that direction, I think there'll be quite a lot of opposition, if you like, in Greece to getting into some sort of alliance, if you like, which involves Turkey. So it's none of this is a done deal. But more immediately, of course, Greece has got a big problem, and that is trying to, originally get rid of the Troika, but basically renegotiate the terms onto a basis which she could actually deliver and have a chance, if you like, of coming out in reasonable shape. And I think that their negotiating stance has been very good in doing that. What they've done is they've managed to put off the deadline by about 4 months. Now, whether in those 4 months they can improve their negotiating position much more will remain to be seen. But against this background, I think that what the finance ministers in Europe are going to be waking up to is that the euro is actually being undermined by this process very, very significantly. Now, they're in a position where I don't think they can win, because the best thing for Greece to do, I think, is to leave the Eurozone. I don't think the Greeks look at it that way, because it's deliberately destructive, if you like, in the sense that you're destroying bad banking and malinvestments. You're facing up to reality. It's rather like admitting I'm bankrupt. I have got to do something about my situation. I can remain with, fending off creditors forever, or I can just put my hands up and say, okay, I give in, and then I can get on with life. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's the position the Greeks are in.
Okay.
And I would, if a Greek minister asked for my advice, I would say what you've got to do, I think, is face the reality, which Varoufakis has done. He said we're bust. He's gone that far. But I think we've got to take it one step further, because the moment they leave the Eurozone, and default, they're going to be something like 650 billion better off. And the losers in this basically are the banking system. For which I really don't think that Greece should shed any tears whatsoever.
None, not a single one.
The situation they're in at the moment is that they have got horrendous levels of unemployment. This whole thing of austerity has not worked for them. And the reason it's not worked is because the austerity has been forced down by the government into the private sector. And they haven't been able to carry it politically either. It's very important, I think, to differentiate between the sort of austerity which has hit Greece, and to a degree has hit Spain and Italy as well, and the sort of austerity that we've been indulging in this country, in the UK. What we've done is we've actually cut government spending. Well, actually, we haven't cut government spending. What we've done is we've cut the planned increases in government spending.
Thank you.
What this has meant is that there is a shift going on in the economy from, a large public sector getting less large, and therefore the private sector getting larger as as a portion of the whole pie. Now, the larger the private sector you have, the better the economy is going to be, because government is a drag on the economy. In the case of Greece and the Mediterranean countries, what has happened is, instead of shrinking the government sector, they've shrunk the private sector. So it's hardly surprising that austerity there has been an absolute death for those economies. The amount of government debt that has increased in those economies has just been absolutely horrendous. And they've just squeezed the private sector the whole time. So that is really what Greece has got to escape from. So long as she's in the Eurozone, her private sector is going to continue to be squeezed, and she's going to have unemployment rates of youth unemployment 50%, unemployment rate generally 25%, 30%. I mean, this is awful. This is absolutely awful.
That is.
And no prospect of it really improving. And the trouble is that nobody within the system actually understands economics. They're macroeconomists in the Keynesian or monetarist mold, who just do not understand the complete lack of validity underlying their theories. And so it's hard to see how anyone can escape from this. But Varoufakis, I think, might be able to do it. But what he's got to do, I think, he's got to bite the bullet and say, right, this is not working for us. We've got to face up to reality, and then we can start again. And if he does that, then it's the implications as far as the Eurozone are concerned are extremely important, because the first thing we have to consider is what confidence is left in the euro itself. And if that confidence is eroded by this process, then that actually could be very serious. You could rapidly see the euro drop to beneath 1 to the dollar. And I suspect also that you will have other movements in Spain and Italy and Portugal beginning to agitate for a similar type escape, because it is absolutely obvious, and it will be even more obvious if Greece leaves the Eurozone, that there is a far greater cost remaining in the Eurozone to being out of the Eurozone.
On the political side, as far as Spain, Italy, and France in particular, they all have something similar to Syriza, if not Syriza itself, and they're divided. I mean, you've got some that are on the left side, you've got some that are on the right side, but they're all calling for the same thing: get us out. We want out, and they're gaining prominence.
This is true. I would, though, draw a distinction between an opposition party in between general elections. I mean, in the case of France, it's Marine Le Pen's party. You would have to draw a distinction, I think, between the popularity that such a party enjoys sort of mid-term, when everybody's sort of not liking the status quo, think they see the government making an absolute pig's ear of it and all the rest of it. They're revolting in this case against Brussels as well. It's a completely different thing when you say to people, right, okay, here's an election, are you going to, be serious in this? Yeah. Or are you going to back off? And basically people back off, because what they don't want is the uncertainty of a liquidation, if you like, which is essentially what Europe is trying to put off.
You don't see Marine Le Pen popularity sustaining itself through the election?
Well, I mean, whether it'll be enough to keep for her to form a government, at this moment I don't really see that, because what tends to happen in an election is that people polarize back into the parties or supporting the parties which they would normally support. We'll see. All I'm saying is that you do tend to find that support for parties like that tends to drop off in a general election. So, we're going to have, we've got lots of political risk here. And so far, markets are just completely ignoring it.
It's amazing.
Which is amazing. But then, I think the point about markets at the moment is they are ignoring risks again. I mean, this to me is sort of pre-Lehman type psychology.
Yes.
There is no such thing as systemic risk. The central banks control everything. Why should we worry about these things? The markets are going up. Stay in them. Yeah.
All is well.
All is well.
NASDAQ 5,000. Woohoo!
Yeah, and if exactly, I mean, it's extraordinary.
Never mind that short fuse that's been lit. Pay
Well,
no attention to that.
What fuse? I mean, we have these problems all the time. So why pay attention to them?
Alasdair, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I really appreciate all the wisdom and the knowledge and getting everybody caught up on what's going on with the gold market in particular, and what's going on in Europe, and with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I'd really like to do a show with you and Dave Kranzler and Turd Ferguson to just discuss the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The three of you know more about it than I believe just about anybody out there, and I think it would be great to have the three of you guys on to just discuss what's going on and what you see and what you know about that, because the implications of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, are huge. They're starting to be seen, and the Chinese in particular are making their presence more known on the global stage as far as economics and as far as their currency is concerned. And these are things that people need to know about. They really do. They may not think they do, but
I have a small anecdote before we go. Actually,
okay.
I interviewed the historian Neil Ferguson. I don't know. Do you know who I mean by Neil Ferguson?
No, sir.
He's a professor of history at one of the colleges in Oxford, and frequent broadcaster. He's a China watcher and all the rest of it. I mean, very well known figure. Commands big fees to speak.
Okay.
Anyway, I interviewed him in Vienna. Must have been about 2.5 years ago. I think 2.5, 3 years ago, and I asked him because he'd recently done a series of programs for the BBC on China. So I thought, well, he'd know about this. So I said, Neil, what do you think about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? And he said, and this is recorded, so I'm not sort of just I'm not giving away any confidences or anything like that, because we recorded this. And he said, well, when it sort of first came out, we thought it was potentially exciting, but actually it seems to have rather died a death. And people are not really. So there we are. There we are.
It's died a death, and people are
Yes.
don't seem to be paying attention to it.
No. There we are. Anyway.
Okay.
It's been great talking to you. And I think that would be very nice with TF and and Dave Kranzler. I think that would be a good idea.
I think it would be awesome. Yeah. And well, we've been speaking with Alasdair Macleod from goldmoney.com and financeandeconomics.org. And Alasdair, I certainly appreciate all your time and all your wisdom, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
That's a great pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Rory.
Thank you.